Hello everyone, my name is Sunnie Morrison. I am an educational counseling major with Azusa Pacific University. The purpose of this video today is to fulfill a collaborative model assignment for Educational Counseling 593, History of Education. And I know that I'm speaking with many school psychology majors and as well as my educational counseling peers. I just wanted to share today a little bit personally, as my son has an IEP. He is now 15 years old. His first IEP was at around 3 years old when he got transferred over from regional center to the school district. So I have a lot of personal experiences collaborating with an IEP team. As you can see with my stack of paperwork here, I'll show you how thick it is. This is just a handful of the IEPs that I have in my file cabinet. The most recent IEP was a triannual, which is where school psychologists, school counselors, case carriers, special education teachers, general education teachers, and the parent coordinates together every 3 years. And they do something called a psychoeducational assessment. And this right here is just 20 pages alone. And then his regular IEP is 23 pages. And so basically, there is a lot of collaboration going on. And that is near and dear to my heart. When I think of a collaborative model, I first think of the scripture in Proverbs that says, as iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. And isn't that true, right? Being in an environment where we could work together as a team, share ideas, express concerns, professionally and personally, it's always the best to be able to be in that situation where we learn from each other's expertise and we learn from each other's personalities and experience. And when it comes to promoting the best for our children in the educational system as future professionals, I believe a collaborative model is best. I found an amazing article that I will cite in my references for you guys to look at. It is all about collaborating and connecting school counselors and school psychologists. And the research shows that when we take the time to coordinate things together, to share ideas, and to be a part of the mental health intervention and prevention at our schools, that's when magic happens, when we are able to really work together. And a couple key phrases I wanted to share with you from this article. Says that a shared goal for school psychologists and school counselors is to promote academic success for students by providing access to mental health supports. As each school mental health professional has unique and overlapping areas of expertise, these professionals must work together to achieve the best outcomes for students. And it shares that the National Association of School Psychologists and the American School Counselor Association lists collaboration as a required activity for the profession. And unfortunately, we don't always see very much coordination and collaboration as much as we could due to time constraints and everybody kind of getting into their own lane and focusing on what their expertise is. But when it comes to those very important IEP meetings and 504 meetings, it is a necessity to collaborate. As we see in the multi-tiered model, it's in the book School Crisis Prevention and Intervention, the PREPARE model, and this is done by National Association of School Psychologists. We see a lot of what we do as school counselors and psychologists listed here in the 3-tier model. So we see all of the beginning level in Tier 1. Tier 2 is where you're going to see the 504s, and you're going to have group counseling intervention, which school psychologists and school counselors collaborate together to respond to crisis, whether that is a death of a teacher, a death of a student, whether that is something as an accident or a crisis on campus. And then Tier 3 is going to have the IEPs. So that's going to be 10 or 15% of the school population. And school counselors and school psychologists coordinate together for those meetings. What I have heard about in the field is, as of recent, is the fact that the epidemic with anxiety and so many students now being on 504 plans, which is this tier 2 section, there is some confusion in the field regarding what constitutes a 504 and some question as to maybe some of the students with anxiety that have 504s, perhaps there's other things going on. So the first thing that comes to mind when I think of a collaborative model and a healthy partnership with school psychologists and counselors is the fact of these two tiers, tier 2 and tier 3. I think it's very important for us to work together and use our expertise to really try to figure out what's going on with this child. There might be just some mild anxiety issues to where a 504 is appropriate, and the tier 2 services are all that is required and is the most appropriate. But yet there might be some other learning disabilities going on. There might be some deeper issues that perhaps can get missed, and maybe students can fall through the cracks if we don't coordinate together to do the various assessments that psychologists are so great at and they've been trained to do in order to assess a student to see is an IEP more appropriate for them. So sometimes this confusion within these two levels is, it seems, what is going on currently in the field. And I feel if you have a healthy collaboration between psychologists and counselors, maybe we could help to remediate some of that. When we sit down and share notes about the children and we assess what is really going on cognitively, emotionally, physically, and we assess everything together with special education and general education teachers, I believe we can break up some of the confusion that is going on, and perhaps some things that are labeled anxiety, perhaps there's something deeper going on, and maybe we're not meeting the needs accordingly. And then these same students might be slipping through the cracks and then carry on to a maladaptive form of life. I believe it's very important for school counselors and psychologists to coordinate more in those areas of clarity when it comes to the 504 or IEP, and just to see what is the most appropriate in these situations. Through some research, I found out that IEPs are governed by special education laws and 504s are governed by civil laws. And as a future counselor, I know I have much more to learn about in the area of 504 because all of my personal experiences is in the area of IEPs. And I wanted to share with you a couple words from when I did some research on collaboration. I found it interesting that the experts share that as schools increasingly implement the response to intervention, or as you know, RTI, service delivery model to meet the needs of diverse student population, consultation will increase in importance. Consultation fits within all tiers of the 3-tier school-based service delivery model, as I showed you in that book. And also this notion of collaborative consultation is an interactive process that enables people with diverse expertise to generate creative solutions to mutually defined problems. The outcome is enhanced, altered, and produces solutions that are different from those that individual team members would produce independently. So key takeaway, that our solutions are going to be different if we're just dealing with our own, with ourselves. But if we openly embrace other professionals, then we're able to come up with more comprehensive solutions to problems with students. A major outcome of collaborative consultation is to provide comprehensive and effective programs for students with special needs within the most appropriate context, as I shared, maybe an IEP or 504, and trying to discern that in a greater volume, and thereby enabling them to achieve maximum constructive interaction with non-handicapped peers. And so when I think of IEPs and I think of 504s, I think collaboration is key. And I just wanted to share from a parent's perspective that the IEP or a 504 can be a pretty emotional experience. One of the first things that you're going to see is you're going to have a parent summary of the student's strengths and a parent summary of the areas of concern or weaknesses. As parent summary of areas of concern. And so the very first thing is you are talking about your child's strengths or deficits. And so this can be pretty pulling on your heartstrings as a parent. And so it's important to hear each other out and to have a group of mutual respect and empathy. And when things like this are shared, it can get a little emotional, but hopefully the goal of the IEP or the 504 is to work together to seek what's most appropriate for the student. And today I wanted to share with you my son's most recent IEP and his psychoeducational assessment, these batteries of tests they do on their assessment methods. And around 6 tests at least were administered by the school psychologist. So one key collaborative piece is during the IEP for the school counselor to be there. In my case, his educational counselor was not even present, but an MFT was present that he received counseling 1 time a week, and his case carrier was there. And the school psychologist administered all these tests, and without her taking the time to explain each one, and this again is 20 pages, I would have no idea what these results are. So collaboratively, the school psychologist shares all the details of these tests, like the Berry developmental test for visual motor integration. They come up with all these scores, see all these numbers, and range from the high, average, or low range. I mean, kind of a novice parent, someone that's new or someone that might be less educated or maybe English as a second language, there would be absolutely no idea that we would be able to understand what this means, and we would get pretty overwhelmed. So thank God, gracious school psychologists will go through the whole result and will highlight some of the issue. They will share if it was a time test. They will discern. For example, my son scored high in applied problems for math, so they will share with me, okay, that's math reasoning. He's able to really reason through things. And then on the areas of concern, they will explain that as well. The school counselor, in my experience, especially with my son in junior high school, it's the fact that they're able to serve as a bridge in that meeting. So I see a school counselor as this bridge between a professional such as a school psychologist and the parent, and then you have a general education teacher or special ed teacher, and it seems like the role of a school counselor is to serve as a bridge to try to get everyone on the same page, perhaps being a squeaky wheel and mentioning something that someone didn't think of, and giving pragmatic ideas for helping the student acclimate in their general education environment. They serve sometimes to, if a school psychologist is explaining things and perhaps some of the explanations become like jargon to a parent and they don't understand, then sometimes school counselors can serve as that in-between person that can explain it in a different way. In the language that they use, and the parent might be able to all of a sudden, oh, okay, the light bulb goes on, and they could see that. As you can see, these IEPs are pretty intense in all that what goes into them, and to have a collaborative model where psychologists can share with parent all the details as to why the student qualifies or what would be what we're seeing as a strength or weakness through the assessments, then a school counselor can take that information and sort of break it up into smaller parts so a parent can understand, as well as maybe just bridge the gaps of, okay, what does this mean now? Is special education placement more appropriate? Is general education? Is a bit of both? What is the LRE, the least restrictive environment? And I believe when it comes to the collaboration between these professionals, hopefully the school counselor will have a little bit more of a personal relationship with the student or perhaps with the parent, and the school psychologist perhaps had never met this family until this time in their lives where they're having this 504 or IEP meeting. So I believe that when we work together, we have this mindset where we are seeking the best interest of the child, we are seeking to properly communicate with the parent, and we're seeking the longevity of comprehensive services for the student. When we do that, then we find this glue that happens within the 504s or the IEPs. And when we seek our own purposes only, and we go in there just individualized in our mindset, then it kind of breaks down the whole concept of the team. An IEP is supposed to be a team. And effective collaboration involves working together in ways that produce actions and valued results. I think that's so important. Even in the way that Azusa Pacific is teaching us collaboratively, where we are in our graduate school with school psychologists and educational counselors, I believe that's on the right step towards preparing us for collaboration. We know that the barriers are time constraints and sometimes just mostly mindset, it seems. It says because of our different perspective, protectiveness. I think as future professionals, we need to fight against that, knowing that, again, that iron sharpens iron, a man sharpens the countenance of his friend, knowing that we are going to learn from each other. We have different areas of expertise. We have different personalities. We have different realms of experience, and I believe putting that all together in one comprehensive collaborative team is so powerful. And I really encourage you to do that in the future in your dealings as an educational counselor or as a school psychologist for the betterment of the families that you will serve. Thank you so much for watching. I will put the references in the bottom of the YouTube.